What is the most outdated social construct by the older generation? My nan doesn't think women should drink out of bottles. She will insist, when you come round, that if you are a woman with a bottle of drink/soft drink, that it goes into a glass. Just women though. It isn't ladylike apparently. My grandmother would not put anything on the dinner table with a label. Catsup, mustard, salt, pepper, salad dressing, etc. Everything was placed in a small bowl or other proper dispenser. Outside of Mr. Burns, or someone making a Simpsons reference, I've never heard anyone actually call ketchup this. Just go into that business and ask to speak to the manager about their job openings. He will be so impressed by your initiative, he will probably hire you on the spot. No grandpa, that's not how the modern world works. It used to be a good advice, but now you're a clown if you try that. Found out firsthand when I was applying for my first job, lol. I tried to do this once and the person said I don't shake hands. It was the most awkward thing and I felt so stupid. Working 9 to 5 at the same job for 40 years to retire and get that gold watch and a pension. What boggles my mind is just how many people end up dead by the age of 70, 75. Do you mean to tell me I'm going to bust my ass saving up millions of dollars that I can't spend until I turn 67 and finally retire, only to just up and die from a heart attack or stroke? Not to mention the fact that by the time you are that old, you are often too out of shape or sick to do anything all that fun anyways. I still remember when my grandparents retired. They were so excited about traveling and whatnot. They bought a travel trailer for their van and went on exactly one road trip before one of them got sick. They sold the trailer and have barely even left home ever since. They just sit at home sick and disabled, waiting until they die. Frick that. I'm gonna live life now. I want to die broke. My grandparents have been retired and relatively healthy through it for like 15 years now, and I think they're bored, honestly. That saying no problem or something in a similar vein is somehow ruder than saying you're welcome. This is something I've had elderly family members mention a few times and I genuinely do not understand it. I was actually taught the exact opposite when I worked at In-N-Out Burger as a kid. If you ever go there, notice they'll never say you're welcome. They're trained to say no problem or my pleasure and things like that. The reasoning is because when you say you're welcome it implies that you did a service for them, but in an In-N-Out size, the customer is doing you a favor by ordering at your store. That's always stuck with me, and to this day, when I hear someone say you're welcome it sounds rude to me. Etiquette is so weird sometimes. There's rude ways to be polite, lol. By the time you're 30 you should own a house, 2 cars, a wife and 2 children. I'm 42 and I do not own a wife. Something has gone wrong. Hell, I'm not even renting one. The older adults in my family hold the belief that children and very young adults don't have real feelings. Basically, if you're under the age of 25 you never know what you're talking about, so shut up and let the grown-ups talk. Now that I'm 30 and am witnessing that behavior from an outside perspective, I've realized that if the older adults did think of the young ones as actual human beings, they wouldn't be able to live with the guilt about how they treat them. Oh, I know that one. The belief that anything anyone under X age says is stupid noise, but also that you never have to address or validate anything they say or feel, because they either won't remember it, or they'll hit Y age and realize how right the adult's reaction was all along. Like now you were just being a dismissive prick and saying, tough crap, go away is easier than actually parenting. The adults that refuse to engage in honest discussion with children are often just scared that the child will learn how stupid the adult is. Family is important. We have to stick together no matter what. Wrong. My family is toxic, manipulative and emotionally abusive. I'm living my own life stress-free without them, and it was the best decision I've ever made. Stop calling me grandma. Vin Diesel was wrong. Dom's family is mostly close friends he has chosen and formed tight bonds of trust with. I don't have friends, I got family. So it kind of goes with the point that you don't get to choose your blood relatives, but you do get to choose your family. My dad gets baffled and downright mad when he hears of women traveling without their husbands. Girls trip? And what is the husband supposed to do while you're gone? Just be at home. Insanity. But guys on the other hand, yeah, they can hang out for a weekend. No big deal. I hear him argue with my aunt over a girl's trip to Florida. Just ridiculous to leave him, uncle, at home. So selfish. There is a certain population of older men who literally cannot function domestically without their wives. They married young and their wives just did everything for them. Their entire role in the relationship was to have a job and provide an income. Apart from that, the wife did the cooking, cleaning, money management, child raising, shopping, etc, etc. If they happen to outlive their wife, they are just at a loss. They have no idea how to cook or clean, what medications they are on, or their health history. Wife remembered all that and end up in a nursing home earlier than they should, purely from a lack of skills rather than physical debilitation. Or their kids have to then take over. I worry about this with my own dad. He didn't marry young, but he did live at home with his parents until he married around the age of 30, at which point he and my mom moved in together. Honestly, I'm not sure he could make a grilled cheese if 100 grand was on the line. You need to have an Entenmann's cake when company comes over. How do they keep the cake so moist? And yes, effortless, well-spoken food chemist guy reading this. Feel free to write 4 paragraphs that then receives 137 awards and gets posted on /r/bestof. Well, until an eloquent food chemist shows up, I'll just say, basically just glycerine holds moisture. Loyalty to corporations or workplaces that are detrimental to the employee. Loyalty to corporations in general, even if you're not an employee and are just a customer. Corporations are not your friends and don't really care about you despite all the PR that might try to convince you of the opposite. Reminds me of the bit from Bo Burnham's special Inside. The question is no longer, do you want to buy wheat thins? The question is now, will you support wheat thins in the fight against Lyme disease? Wife takes care of baby all the time. Husband is given high five when he watched said baby. Aren't we both the kid's parent? My wife got into a tiff with her sister when they were out. Their server knew them and said how it must be nice to get away from the kids for a bit. Her sister goes, yeah, he's babysitting for the afternoon. And when my wife was asked what we were up to, she raised an eyebrow and said, parenting. I've heard a lot of dads say I'm babysitting today. Wait, isn't it called being a parent? Give me grandkids. No. In this economy, at this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the country, localized entirely within your kitchen? That a man has to ask a woman's dad for permission to marry her. I didn't do this. She was already in her 30s, and it didn't seem necessary. Offense was taken. If he complains, ask when you're getting the dowry. Staying married to someone who treats you poorly or is outright abusive, because divorce is wrong and God doesn't like divorce. I divorced my mentally and emotionally abusive ex-husband after 2 years of marriage. We were very young, and now I have a beautiful family with a man who respects me and makes me laugh every day. I see my grandmother, who is a saint, being treated poorly by her husband after 50 plus years of marriage and just taking it. It makes me sad. Amen. I'm divorcing my abusive wife, and it's hard to understand sometimes that what I'm feeling every day is hope for the future. I had spent so long without it, I hadn't noticed it slipping away. Good for you. Leaving and staying away is often the hardest part, but there are better things out there for you. Take your time, but when good things come your way, and they will, embrace them. Good luck. That houses are easy to buy. House prices are insane. I'm 62, and we bought our home in 1993 for $132,000, but have refinanced several times due to financial issues, and we now owe $242,000. Yup. It is now valued at $500,000 plus despite needing work. The house next door to me was built from a Sears and Roebuck kit back in the day for $3,500, and the last time it sold at 5 years ago, it went for $417,000. Similar to my parents. They're in their 60s, bought a house for $200,000 in 1996. Now the house is worth $885,000, and it could also use some major repairs and remodeling. An ugly ass house down the street that's structurally unappealing and cheaply made, sold for $1.3 million back in May 2020. Insane to me. Going into the workplace to do your job when you could do your job perfectly fine from home via telecommute. They can never understand that. Yes, I'm actually working when I'm home during the week. I'm definitely only working like 5 hours a week while I've been home over the last year, although I don't remotely feel bad about it. Why? Because in the before times, my 60-something coworker who was a stickler for not slacking and once ratted me out to upper management for being 15 minutes late to an office job twice in a 3-month period, types at roughly 20 WPM and takes literally 5 hours to do what I can use macros and Excel formulas to do in 15 minutes. I once watched him hunt and peck to update a spreadsheet that I had duplicated and upgraded with self-updating formulas. I got bored after 10 minutes, but I just needed to make sure I wasn't going crazy. For the longest time I didn't understand why so many people seemed to be putting in overtime and why I felt like I was always slacking. Then on that magic day I found out that I'm the most competent, capable person in my workplace, and it's not that I'm slacking, but that the baseline is so far below me that I can't even see it. That's what a 40-hour work week looks like to the people keeping track. So yeah, I don't remotely feel bad about working 5 hours a week and being salaried for 40 because I'm giving them 40 boomer hours of labor output, which it's clear they accept. I work in a desk side support and there is a woman who I do not understand how she works here. She was asked to install monitors and couldn't figure it out at all. Like you just plug them in, but apparently that was too difficult for her. She had to come back 3 times for instructions, more than likely because she wanted someone to come up and do it for her. She couldn't even log into her own computer. Apparently she just locks her own computer and never logs out of it or reboots it, and was complaining about how she doesn't have a username when she definitely does. I don't get it. And she probably gets paid more than everyone because she's more senior. That you need a college degree to get a good paying job. Manager, welcome aboard. You can forget everything you learned in college. Me, that's good cause I never went to college. Manager, oh sorry. We only hire college grads. The job application for my current job said a B/BS is required. When I started the job, which is completely unrelated to my degree, I learned that most of my older coworkers don't even have degrees. Which is not to throw shade at them, but at managers for having high standards for crappy pay. That everyone going to college/university must be extremely smart and other professions are for the not so privileged ones. Reminds me of the German education system. Our highest education besides uni, the Abitur, used to secure you a job. Now 50% of graduates own one and make it nearly worthless. 5-day work week. Fun fact, there used to only be 1 day of weekend, so people could go to church. In the beginning of the 20th century, factories began implementing 2 days weekend to boost the economy, and it worked. In the 50s, economists predicted that we would have 3 or 4 days weekend before the 21st century. I wish it would have happened. It wasn't companies that decided that, it was unions that campaigned, fought, bled, and died to force companies to have 8-hour workdays and 40-hour work weeks. Printing everything. Like why? Such a waste of money. I don't get how ads in the mail is even a thing. So you want me to bring my own bags when I go shopping, but you can't even restrict companies from killing trees to send me crap I don't care about. I wish there was a postal system spam blocker. Not being able to move in with a significant other unless you are married. I got told that if you live with them first, you're taking the fun out of getting to know them once you're married. WTF, I wanted to know if I could live with my now husband before I legally bound myself and entangled my assets with him. Call me crazy. That it's a shameful thing when your adult children live in the home. My parents straight up don't want me to leave home. My younger sisters are still minors and they are a bit crazy. My parents say I need to stay around to keep them sane. Family structure. You all matter and depend on each other's different strengths to get through the hard times. I think it's important and good. Look at old cookbooks. Even as late as the 1960s it still said that it was the wife's responsibility and duty to cook to her husband's satisfaction and liking. I have a handbook for hosts from that time, and the introduction talks about how men are better cooks because they choose to cook. It's also because men were seen as a creative force and women were seen as merely able to copy. That's why men were chefs, but women just cooks. Men were clothes designers, women were mere weavers. I think older generations are way out of step with tattoo acceptance. I was raised that it was just for sailors and prisoners. My parents were born in the mid-40s and probably still believe that. Yeah, it was a huge class thing. My dad grew up in the St. Louis Foundries, and tattoos were basically seen as branding yourself as bottom tier of the working class for life. Not saying it was right, but it is how it was. It's pretty crazy that now tattoos are an edgy rite of passage for well-off 18-year-olds. That tattoos and piercings aren't professional or aren't appropriate. I'm sorry Susan, what's my ear being pierced gonna do while I answer 75,000 emails? What is my Pac-Man tattoo gonna do? Scar you for life if you see it? God forbid someone have any kind of body modification, work of art on their body. Like, I get it if you have your wrists pierced or something, or if you work in a job where getting that stuck could risk serious injury. But for an office job? Seriously? And unnatural hair colors? I assure you, the purple hair dye didn't absorb into my brain. I've always been this dumb. While granny walks around reeking of perm. Boomers and previous generations, work hard, don't make waves, be loyal, put your time in, and when we retire you can change the system from the inside. This is how Gen X legalized weed, first for medical use, and now for recreation. If you study hard, work hard, you will have a great future. I'm more qualified than my parents' generation, and working way more than them, but I don't own crap. I used to believe you get out what you put in. Boy was I freaking wrong. I excel above the majority of my coworkers, but I can't seem to get a promotion. Why would they, when I work like this for this pay rate, right? So now I happily put in a solid 60% and call it a day. Guess who is finally being moved to a higher paying department? Yup, me. Houses should have a formal dining room reserved for guests, special family occasions, and Sunday dinners, even when there's ample space in the eat-in kitchen. That your work ethic determines your earning ability. Work ethic helps, but by far the most important factor is the perception of your work ethic. This means that it isn't enough to work hard, you also must make sure that the right people know about it. That online friends aren't real friends. Me and my grandparents always disagree with this. I have online friends that I'm closer to than half my family. Health insurance is a perk of employment. I had a prospective employer recently offer me a telehealth service rather than health insurance, and, boy, she really thought she was doing something there. Turns out, you can also do telehealth appointments conveniently from your desk, so you can keep working and not have to be out of the office. I noped the frick out of that, and thankfully have health insurance anyway. Gender roles. I cook, clean, do the laundry, grocery shop, change the diapers, dress the kids, send them off, and pick them up from school, but I'm a giant dude who loves death metal. I come from a house with defined gender roles, really just meant that my mom did everything, while my dad acted like sitting at his desk all day was somehow harder. The only time anyone in my house is limited by their gender is when my wife isn't physically strong enough to do something. Otherwise the only thing that matters is working together. Absolutely agree. If I didn't do the things you listed, I'd probably feel like a worthless parent. Thankfully my family isn't really like that, but I've met others like that. So what if I'm wearing a pink and white wool hat? My grandma taught me how to knit it. Thank you cards. To this day my mom is still mad at certain people for not sending thank you cards, be it wedding gifts, baby shower gifts, or whatever. I'm sorry that saying thank you directly or having me relay the gratitude for them isn't enough. Yes, these brand new young parents and these 20-something newlyweds should definitely take time from getting ready for life events to write a goddamn card saying thank you. I don't live in USA, and we don't send thank you cards. This whole practice seems weird. We just call or text or say thanks when we see them. It's okay and acceptable in many other places. Be loyal and a good employee to the company and they'll take care of you. My grandfather, father and Phil all worked at Motorola. They all said that the company was great and took care of its employees at one point in time. My father and Phil both said they experienced the culture change from a focus on customers and employees to Wall Street investors. I have heard from many other individuals how great it was to work and retire from major corporations. It's really unfortunate that the focus of these companies has shifted so much. The workers give so much and get relatively nothing in return. It seems to be the norm pretty much everywhere you work. When I used to visit my parents, my mom would ask me if I'd like to get my husband a drink. My answer was always nope. He knows where the fridge is. Oh, such a rebel move. My mom does the same to me lol. Midja, ask him if he wants some coffee. Don't get me wrong. If I'm going to the kitchen, of course I'll get him something to drink. He does the same for me. It blows her mind. Talking about religion/politics and talking about your salary with coworkers. If you don't do this, you've fallen for a propaganda campaign designed to rob you of your negotiating power. Not to mention that you are legally protected from them firing you for doing this. No eating with a hat on. I used to always wear a hat. Had a constant problem with dry scalp/dandruff all my life, at all times. When I left the house, I've got probably several dozen different caps, bandanas, and other hats. Damn insults ruined fedoras for everyone, and I was yelled at for this so many times by my grandfather. So instead of just being comfortable at meals, I had to sit there and be self-conscious about who was noticing my dry scalp, because somehow wearing a hat impedes other people's ability to eat. Specific colors for boys and girls. It's stupid and pointless. This makes me think of when all of the boys in my second grade class got together at recess and decided that pink and purple were acceptable colors for boys. Endless growth on never-ending resources. In the same vein, endless growth in business profits. You're considered a failure if you didn't make more than last year, even though your company still was very profitable. You have to go to college if you want to succeed in life. Note, I went to college, graduated in 2005, and I'm still paying 10% interest on student loans. The money I paid in interest alone I could have put into a 401k instead and retire comfortably when retirement hits. That rich people work hard. Amazon workers should be grateful. Without Jeff Bezos, none of them would have jobs. Without Jeff Bezos, Amazon workers would work anywhere else. Without Amazon workers, there would be no Amazon. Tipping. Just pay people a living wage. The customer is always right. One of the best things in my life is telling customers they're wrong in retail. In my line of work I have much more flexibility and independence if someone tries to complain, and my boss backs me up. For context, it's usually about prices or comparing competitors' items. At one point I got done arguing and went to my competitor's shop to see what the actual pricing is during an argument. Came back with proof of their lying on paper, and they begrudgingly bought my item after sweating heavily. The idea that every individual should have to earn their own keep without help starting the day they turn 18. Humanity's greatest strength has always been that we form societies and take care of each other, but somehow after getting the American dream for cheap, a couple generations decided to make it 1,000 times harder and adopted the attitude of I got mine. I know not all of them think this way, but enough do, that it affects the fabric of our society and government. The current education system, made not to truly educate, but to educate enough to work in a factory. Also, 40-hour, 5-day work weeks. My elderly father thinks guys should only get their left ear pierced. Right ear piercing was a code that gay men used in the past. So, it's not really that odd. During the time it was specifically used to identify yourself as gay. Now, obviously no one cares, and we've moved along from such things. That tattoos/piercings make you less professional and less marketable to employers. Okay, I don't want to freaking work there then. If my insurance agent had a sleeve and gauges I would be like, okay, so can you give me a good quote or My only issue, as a substantially tattooed person myself, is when the imagery is potentially not universally palatable. God, I would love to still have my gauges in, but I decided that was not a battle I would win. Apparently they are more unsanitary than regular piercings. Even though I can bet most people with stretched ears clean those areas way more than someone with regular piercings. The idea that you owe your parents for bringing you up. If two people willingly brought a child into the world, the debt is from them to their child, not the other way round. It's nothing more than common decency to feed, clothe and educate, not just by sending them to school. They should be taught manners, social skills and respect, etc. A human being that you consented to creating. I'll do anything for my parents, not because I owe them anything, but because I love them and care about them. I, 23F, am married. Many family members are appalled that I take turns cooking with my husband. If someone calls and he is cooking, they either praise him or tell him to drop it and let me cook so he can rest. Often they think it's a special occasion. People, I deserve rest too. I too can cook, yet nobody ever praises me.